Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Bio 2510, Anatomy and Physiology 1. My name is Bob Ratterman, and I'll be with you guys for the next 15 weeks or so. I'm recording this Zoom lecture to sort of take some time for us to take a look at the syllabus, talk a little bit about the course, which is what we would have done had we met face-to-face, but of course we're in times of COVID-19, so we'll be meeting as a class on Wednesdays from 1:15 to 2:30 via this modality, Zoom. There is no lecture class on Monday. That's your time to study the notes, read the text, watch the Zoom chapter lectures, and look at the PowerPoints I'll be putting on Blackboard for you to review, studying for quizzes, exams, lab practicals. You should have plenty of stuff to keep you busy on Mondays or any day of the week, really. But we won't be meeting again other than Wednesdays for lecture. Luckily, though, I will see you guys in person for lab, which is 9 to 11:45 on Wednesdays. So we'll get a chance to kind of get to know one another a little bit more when we finally get a chance to meet. So that's kind of nice. We won't be virtual the entire semester. So let me begin by just kind of talking about me a little bit so you have some idea of who I am. I've been at JCC for a long time. I started teaching right after graduate school. I was born in Iowa. I have some relatives still that live in eastern Iowa along the Mississippi River. I did my undergraduate degree at a small four-year college called Loras College in Dubuque. Got a bachelor's in biology. Then I transferred to Iowa State University in Ames, which is located in the center part of the state. And there I studied in the Department of Zoology and graduated in 1987, the same year that I came to JCC. So I've been here, this is my 34th year teaching, hard to believe. I've taught a lot of different courses in the science curriculum, the biology curriculum here at the college. I've taught Principles of Biology 1 and 2. I've taught Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2. I've taught microbiology. I've taught health science, zoology, human biology. I teach a tropical biology course with another colleague from the Jamestown campus. And we take a group of students down to Costa Rica and Panama every other spring semester. Now, because of COVID, we were unable to go last spring. So we have a spring 22 trip in mind. So if any of you are interested in that, you can talk to me about that. That's a really fun course. I've been doing that particular course, the tropical biology course, gosh, for almost 20 years. So that's probably my favorite course because that's sort of my field. But I like A&P and I like micro. Those are the two courses I teach mostly now. I live in Randolph. My wife works at JCC in Jamestown in the Career Development Counseling Center area. We have two daughters. Our oldest, Kelly, is married and has a 2-year-old. She lives in Hamburg and works at HSBC Bank. And our youngest daughter, Leah, went actually through the Occupational Therapy Assistant program on the Jamestown campus and then transferred to Gannon University in Erie, where she got her master's degree in occupational therapy just last May. We have an articulation agreement with Gannon whereby a student can get their 2-year OTA degree and then with another 3 years at Gannon can graduate with both a bachelor's and a master's degree. So it's a pretty nice articulation agreement that she took advantage of. Hobbies that I enjoy include hunting and fishing and hiking. I like photography. I've gotten into photography quite a bit the last few years. I also have 4 beehives. So I am a beekeeper, and that's that kind of a fun hobby. Get to dress up in my little white outfit and get stung a lot of times, but we get honey in the spring and in the fall, and so that's been a really kind of fun learning experience. I've been doing that for probably close to 5 or 6 years, and I'm actually vice president of the Chautauqua County Beekeepers Association. So I get together with some friends every month. We've been doing Zoom meetings, but we have an apiary near the Jamestown Airport with about 10 hives that the club basically runs. And we take people who join the club through the hives. We teach them about how to identify different diseases and different aspects of beekeeping. And so it's been a really, really enjoyable hobby for me. So that's a little bit about myself. And I want to basically now turn to the course syllabus, which I'd like to share with you here on the Zoom. So let me see if I can do that. Okay, hopefully you see the course syllabus, which of course you can copy and print off. It's found in the course shell of the A&P course you're in. So this basically has a lot of housekeeping sorts of topics that we want to just kind of take some time and go through. First of all, remember, as I mentioned not too long ago, as far as the lecture goes, we're going to be Zooming on Wednesdays, but Monday will be remote. In other words, we will not be meeting. You should be using this time to the best of your ability to study lab and lecture stuff. Here's the lab, which I think all of you are also enrolled in, Wednesday, 9 to 11:45. Note this is in Allied Health and Science Center, room 203. This is not, actually, that should probably be reading room 204, I believe. That's an error there. 203, I believe, is the biology lab. We're going to be meeting in the lecture room across the hall from the biology room. So I just happened to catch that. So we're not in the bio lab. We are in the lecture room just across the hall from the bio lab. So please make note of that. This is my office, room 220 on the 2nd floor. It's basically down the hall from the bio lab and the lecture room. There's my office phone number and my email. Should you need to contact me, you can easily do that. Here are my office hours. I am on campus on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So you see those in-person times listed. And then I do have Zoom office hours on Mondays for a big chunk of that day. So if you have any interest in meeting with me one-on-one, just like you would if you stopped by my office, if you were on campus, we can do that via Zoom. And I would ask you to please make an appointment through Starfish so that I can then see that. I receive an email actually when an appointment is booked, and then I can be ready for that and know that there are people that want to meet with me on a Monday or whatever the case may be. And we'll be using the same Zoom room for these office hours as we will for the Wednesday afternoon lecture. I want to also mention that there is an optional Tuesday review session for this course. It meets 11:30 to 12:20. Again, it's optional. There's a $30 fee associated with the review. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions, to go over material related to lecture or lab. It is what it is, what it says it is. It's a review session. Again, not something you have to sign up for, but I know a lot of you are signed up for that. And that particular review will be Zoomed again, using the same Zoom link, the same Zoom room as we will be using for lecture. Okay, so there's a few prerequisites that you can read over, basically chemistry, either high school chemistry or our introduction to chemistry. Either one of those would be expected before you take A&P 1. So there's some basic chemistry that we expect you to know. You should have taken or are taking Comp 1. And then this note basically references the fact that when you take A&P, you're probably going to need both semesters, right? Because a lot of you are going into the nursing program, not maybe everyone, but a lot of you I know are. This is simply saying that if you're going to take maybe A&P in the fall at JCC, and then you plan to transfer for whatever reason to another school in the spring, or vice versa. In this case, you're taking A&P in the spring, and you want to take A&P 2 next fall at a different school. You could run into some potential issues. So we strongly suggest that if you're going to take the sequential A&P 1, A&P 2, that you take it at the same school. Try not to mix and match, because I think you sometimes run into problems in terms of transferability. So that's all that talks about. And if that's something you're concerned about, just chat with me about that. The two textbooks we're going to be using in this course, the first one is called Human Anatomy and Physiology, Holes, A&P. It is the 15th edition by Shear. And I'm going to just hold that up here so you can see what it looks like. We're using the 15th edition. And the lab book, I'm not going to bother to show you because the front cover of my lab book has been so worn that it's actually torn off. But it is a customized version of a lab book that I believe corresponds to the lecture text. So you should try to pick up that customized lab book. And the nice thing about these two books is that you can use them again, and we'll use them again when you take Bio 2520, which is the second half of the A&P sequence. As you'll see in a little while, when we talk about the lecture syllabus, I have all of the chapters listed by week. So if you're one that likes to read ahead, whether it's lab or lecture, you have all that information available to you. And I encourage you, especially for lab, but even for lecture, to try to take some time and to look over the exercise before coming in to class. Again, a little more important probably for lab than it is for lecture, but even if you can read the lecture text chapter ahead of time before the actual lecture itself, that would be probably very helpful. In terms of your course grade, I've broken it down basically into two major segments, the lecture segment and the lab segment. So let's talk a little bit about the lecture first. There'll be 4 lecture exams. Now note here that this says they'll be given during lab. Remember, we're meeting in lecture via Zoom. We won't have formal lectures face-to-face, but we will have lab face-to-face. So what we did last fall, and it seemed to work out pretty well, is we took all of the lecture quizzes and the lecture exams in lab. So that has been built into the lab schedule, as you'll see a little bit later. So 4 of these, the format, as it indicates here, consisting of multiple choice, matching, short answer, and usually your choice of some essays. So that's sort of a potpourri of different types of questions you can expect to see for the lecture exams. We're going to be having several lecture quizzes. Again, they're going to be given in lab, okay, at a scheduled date. And we'll be dropping the lowest of those lecture quizzes. There'll be 1 chemistry exam that will cover chapter 2 in the whole Human A&P textbook that I showed you a few moments ago. I am not going to provide a formal lecture to you on chapter 2, but rather you're going to be working on this chapter, reading the chapter, referring to some study objectives, which I'll talk more about a little bit later, as you prepare for this 30-point chemistry exam that we'll be taking on the 10th of February. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll talk more about that, but just be aware that you can begin anytime looking at chapter 2 and preparing for this 30-point multiple choice chemistry exam. In lab, we've got 3 lab practicals, 6 lab quizzes, and an instructor evaluation. So let's talk about those 3 in that order. First, the lab practical exams are basically big quizzes. They're worth, I think, 50 or 60 points each. And I would just as soon wait and talk to you about that when we get together one-on-one. I can kind of go over this in a little more detail with you, but they're given about a third of the way in, about 2/3 of the way in, and then I think our very last lab at the end of May, middle of May, will be the last lab practical. So they're sprinkled out evenly and cover material that we talk about in lab. This will not include lecture material. This is strictly lab stuff. The same applies for the lab quizzes, only there are going to be 6 of those. So they're going to be almost every other week. We're going to have a lab quiz, a 10-point lab quiz. Again, I would just ask you to wait to get more information about exactly what's going to be on those quizzes when we get together face-to-face on Wednesdays. But I do want you to note that we want to take those quizzes right at the beginning of lab. So please make sure you're there on time. Lab starts at 9. Because if you come in 10, 15 minutes late, you forfeit the right to take the quiz. And I really hate to prevent students from taking quizzes, but we have to take those at the beginning of class. So I'm just asking you, pleading with you to make sure you are there on time. Don't wait to the last minute to find a parking spot, get here and be in class a few minutes early. Always a good thing to do. As with the lecture quizzes, we're going to be dropping the lowest lab quiz. Then we've got an instructor evaluation worth 20 points, where I look at things like your attendance in class, both lecture and lab. Are you prepared for class? Have you read ahead? Are you familiar with what we're going to be doing, for example, in lab, let's say, that day? Are you engaged? Are you paying attention to what we're talking about? Or are you sitting in the back in the Zoom class, watching videos on your phone or whatever? It becomes real obvious to me real quick who is engaged and who's not engaged. This is a rather subjective grade, I guess, or points, but I would not call them insignificant. So just please be attentive, be engaged. You're going to have more fun. You're going to learn it. So learn it better if you're engaged in the course. So here's a summary of those points, the lecture points and the lab points. So we've got a total of 430 lecture points, 240 lab points, for a grand total of 670 course points. So what I will be doing at the 6-week grade time, also again at the end of the course, is I'll be tallying up all of your points that you gather in both lecture and lab. And I will, at the end of the semester, see where you fall here in this 3rd column. In terms of the 6-week grade, what I'll do is I will add up your points, divide by the total possible. That'll give me a percentage of total, and that'll correspond to a given grade. Okay. And you can see that generally, if you're achieving 90 to 100% of the total points, that's obviously the A grade. If you're getting less than 60% of the total course points, then you're not passing the course. So again, you can come to this grade schematic, and I would encourage you to keep track of your points. Keep track of your lecture points, keep track of your lab points. Devote a page of your notebook to course points. And when you get the quiz back, you get the practical back, or whatever it may be, put it in there, or put it in your phone, or whatever. Keep track. I'm happy to provide you with your points as well, but I'm a real proponent of you monitoring your progress throughout the course. Okay, so if you want to know where you stand grade-wise at any particular time, all you got to do is tally up your points, divide by the total possible. They'll give you a percentage, and you can see what the corresponding grade is at that particular point in time, that snapshot, if you will, at any point within the semester. A couple important notes here. I'll let you kind of read over those first couple. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Number 3 is simply saying attendance is really, really important. Especially as pertains to lab. Super important that you're coming to each of those labs and completing those labs. If for any reason you miss a lab, here are some things you need to be mindful of. You need to let me know that you are missing lab. Now, obviously, I'm not going to, if I don't see it there, I know you're not there, but I'm asking you to follow up within 24 hours via email, preferably, why you missed lab and what you plan to do to make that lab up. You must make up the lab. You can't just blow it off and say, not worried about it. It's going to hurt you in the long run if you do that. I expect you to make that lab up. That means coming in on your own time, perhaps, and looking at the slides or reviewing the models or whatever we did for that lab you missed. So we'll need to talk, you and I, about that. But I want all those labs made up within a week. If we wait longer than a week, there's new labs being taught every week. You're going to fall behind. It's not going to be pretty. Believe me, I've been doing this for 34 years. I've seen this happen a million times. Students, if they don't get it done quickly, often don't follow through and complete it. So you're going to be quizzed on this lab stuff. So you really need to make sure you're completing the necessary labs and doing the work for those. So please read this number 3 note over carefully and be aware of the policy. Number 4, again, you can read that over. It just talks about cheating and the ramifications of cheating. Again, I don't think I need to talk about that. Number 5, makeup exams. If you miss a lecture test, you better have a good reason as to why you missed the class, why you missed that test, and be prepared for an all essay makeup during finals week, meaning the last week of the semester. This particular makeup all essay test tends to be a little bit harder than the regular exam. So I would encourage you not to miss a lecture exam. Please note also that any lecture or lab quiz that you miss, I will assume that will be the quiz you're dropping. And if you miss any more than one lecture quiz or one lab quiz, then you can't make those up. Now I indicate here no lab practicals will be made up. I really would prefer that you not do a makeup lab practical. If you have a super good reason as to why you missed the practical, we could consider that. But again, it's going to be a much harder makeup to do. So the bottom line is, have a super great reason why you missed a practical or an exam. Don't miss them. Number 6 is just asking you to come to class, in this case lab, but even the Zoom classes, I really like to have people there at 1:15. It's kind of irritating to have people chiming in, when you enter a room, the chime rings and all that. Try to be ready for class, whether it's lecture or lab. Number 7, you can read over. Number 8 simply says that during class, and I'm specifically talking about lab more than anything else here, I don't want you on your cell phone checking or texting while we have class, while we have lab. That is just not a good thing to do. It's rude. I take it personally when people are texting while I'm trying to teach. If you would like to text and you feel that takes precedence over me teaching, then I'd like you to leave the room and text. Okay? So just want you to be aware of that. And if I see people doing that, I will dock you points in the instructor evaluation grade. Those 20 points are in jeopardy if you do that. Number 9, you can read that over. Number 10, this gets at an opportunity for you to review lab quiz material or lab practical material in preparation for upcoming evaluations. Okay, so in other words, we normally have lab on Wednesdays, right? And that's when our lab quizzes and our lab practicals are going to be. So we're making attempts at trying to get that room 204, where we're going to be having lab, available to you on Tuesdays. So if you want to come in the day before the quiz or the day before the lab practical, you can review the models, the slides, whatever is going to be on the practical or the quiz. It's optional. You don't have to come, but we like to have an open lab for you to use if you would like to do that. And because of the COVID situation, what we found last fall is we had a check-in sheet for you to sign. So you sign your name, the time in, and the time you leave the lab, so that our maintenance folks know, number one, who, if anybody, was in that room that day. There may be some Tuesdays, for example, where nobody comes in and they don't have to clean it. If, however, they see 2 or 3 people came in on a given Tuesday, then they're going to take steps later in that day to disinfect the room. Okay, so that's why we have the sign up sheet, the sign in, the sign out. So we'll talk more about that when we get together face to face, but I did want you to know that we are making an attempt to have that room open other than on Wednesdays when we normally get together. Number 11 simply talks a little bit about the quiet study room, which is located right adjacent to our lab room. Remember, this is 204 now we're talking about. We've got several PCs in there. There is a printer. And so if you ever want to, use any PCs in the Allied Health and Science Center, you can go into that quiet study room and use those. They are there for you to use. Blackboard, we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll share some Blackboard stuff with you in a few minutes. But that's where all of the information related to the course is going to be housed. You're all familiar with Blackboard, I'm sure. But we're going to look at that a little bit later. Number 13, emergency closing procedures. I highly encourage you to sign up for this JCC alert. A lot of you are probably familiar with this already. This is I think a SUNY site or SUNY affiliated website, whereby if there is a closure of the campus due to snow or ice, or for whatever reason, you can receive an instant text or voicemail, or maybe even an email. As soon as the decision has been made, for example, to close campus due to snow, you would get an instant message on that, rather than having to, go online or turn on the TV and look for the closure listing or what have you. So I really think you all should make use of this JCC alert. It's really a good thing to have. Number 14, late assignment policy. Just remember that if there are any things that you need to turn in by certain due dates, that you get those in there to me by those due dates. I'm not going to accept things late. Number 15 are just some links to the student responsibility statement, academic integrity, and civility statements. You've seen these in your various syllabi, I'm sure, as well, but there are links there that you can take a look at. Number 16, any handouts you need to bring with you. I am not going to be printing them and handing them to you in lab each week. And there will be quite a few different handouts that I'll be talking to you about in Blackboard in a few minutes that you should be printing off and bringing with you. If you don't have the information, how can you perform the lab exercise? All right, so please, please, please make every effort to print these off. My suggestion is take a half hour in the next week print off all the necessary lab-related documents, print them all off at one time, get it done in one fell swoop. And there is a 3-hole punch I can give you at school, and then you can put those into a small little cheap binder and bring that with you to lab each week, and you are golden for the entire course. If you try to print these off week by week, I can guarantee you there'll be no paper in the printer in the room, next door, the quiet lounge, because you think you can get there at 8:45 and get that printed off for lab at 9. Don't do it, because it won't work. There will be times when no paper, the printer's jammed, the internet's down, you name it, it'll happen. So take some time now, get that printed off, put it together in a binder, bring it each week, you're good. Number 17 is just going over the fact that we have, of course, our library in the LLAC building. The Learning Center is housed there. The Accessibility Office is housed there. This little blurb, number 17, kind of goes over each of those 3 components of the Learning Commons. And so I'm not going to spend time talking to you about this. I would just ask that you please read this and you're informed as to these services that are for you to make use of, right? We're here to help you succeed in this course. We're here to help you succeed in getting your degree. We can do only so much. You need to take advantage of these opportunities too. So check that out. There is tutoring available in the Learning Center, and you should contact Beth Lisi. You can either stop over there and talk to her, or send her an email and make appointments with some tutors. I think she has a couple A&P tutors this semester. And of course, we have office hours. We have the review session as well, so you can ask me questions. So there's ample opportunity for answers to questions. So again, I'll ask you to just kind of look that over. Here's Starfish, a little blurb about Starfish. Success in college requiring ample study, ample organization, right? You've certainly begun to learn that. You're in your 2nd semester or more here at JCC. So just remember that while it involves a lot of work on your part, there are lots of folks here that are here to help you on your journey here at the college too. Number 20. Here's a little incentive I like to dangle in front of you here. If going into the 4th lecture exam, after having taken the 3rd lab practical, if you have 90% or more of the total course points, excluding the extra credit paper, you will be exempt from having to take the 4th exam, and you'll get an A for Bio 2510. So this is something to be mindful of, something to shoot for. And every semester, I have a couple of students who take advantage of this special incentive. So I would encourage you to give some thought to that. Extra credit. There is an optional extra credit research paper worth 25 points. So this is above and beyond the course points. This is icing on the cake, so to speak. The stipulation that I have for this extra credit paper is that the topic must consist of something covered in A&P 1. Okay, please remember that. It must pertain to a topic covered in this course. You will want to choose a topic that you're interested in, number 1, because that's what you're going to have more fun writing, something that you want to learn about, right? That you have wanted to learn about for a long time, let's say, or maybe we talk a little bit about it in the lecture and you're thinking, well, I'd like to check into that more. That's a good way to choose a topic. I will throw out suggestions as the semester proceeds as well. But don't come to me and say, what should I write my extra credit paper about? I'm not going to assign you a topic. You need to come up with a topic. I'm happy to talk to you about that. We can brainstorm together. That's fine. But you should give some thought to this. And you got to make sure that this is a college level research paper. You've got to go above and beyond the information presented in class or in the textbook. You got to do some digging. This is something that should be akin to a college or university level paper. That means proper spelling, proper sentence structure, proper punctuation, and so forth. So I'm going to be looking for that. Now, there are folks in the Learning Center that will help you with this if you need any help, or will proofread it for you after you've written it. We'll go over it with you to catch those grammar errors or whatever the case may be. And you know who you are, right? If you've had issues with grammar or punctuation, don't magically think they're going to disappear. You got to work on that, right? It takes time to learn how to write well. So get that paper proofread before you turn it into me. Minimum of 5 sources, with no more than 4 electronic sources. So I would really like to have at least 1 hard copy source of some sort. That could be from your textbook, that could be from a magazine, it could be from another book in the library. So I really don't want all the sources to be online. If we can help it, I'd like you to try to get, if you can, 1 hard copy source. Now, this is minimum. You can have 10 sources if you want. You gotta have at least 5. Any sources that you do use, be they online or hard copy, I would like that information that you use to help you write the paper. I want you to photocopy that particular section of the article and highlight it so that I know you're not plagiarizing. Okay, so be aware of that. You need to okay your topic with me by the 21st of April, with the paper being due, I think, about 2 weeks later on May 5th. That gives me enough time to read them and correct them before the end of the semester. And I would prefer that you bring a hard copy with you to lab, okay, as opposed to you emailing me your paper. And remember, no papers accepted after May 5th. If you have any questions on that, we can certainly talk about that. How to succeed in A&P. Well, this course has quite a reputation. It's considered a weed-out course in many institutions, whether it's for nursing or pre-med, pre-vet, whatever the case may be. Some allied health career obviously requires A&P. And it is a challenging course. There's no question about it. There's a lot of information that you need to digest and regurgitate in a relatively short period of time. We basically cover half of the organ systems in A&P 1 and the other half of the organ systems in A&P 2. So in a matter of 30 to 32 weeks, you're covering 11 organ systems. That's a lot of information. So you need to be prepared for this. You need to spend ample outside time, outside of class time, reviewing and studying this stuff and going over it again and again and again. So coming to class regularly is important. Now, again, with COVID-19, we're in Zoom, right, for lecture. So it's a little different. It's more challenging in many, many respects, right? No question about that. But the more you can hit the textbook, hit your notebooks, going over them again and again, taking information from the text, putting it into the lecture notes, the better it's going to be. I used to take lecture notes in blue pen, and then I'd go home that evening and I'd read over the chapter that the professor was lecturing on, okay? And I would use a different color ink, usually red ink, and I would go into chapter 15 and I would read over what he or she lectured on that day. And then in my notebook, I would supplement the lecture notes with the textbook notes, if you will, so that when I studied for my quiz or my exam, I had the blue instructor notes and I had the red ancillary supportive textbook notes. The key in doing that is to make sure you give enough spacing between major topics in lecture while you're in class, so that when you go home at night, you're not crunching all of the textbook information in a very limited small space within your notebook. It's something you'll learn to do as you do it. But personally, that was what I found really, really worked well for me. Other students highlighted within the textbook. Everybody's got their own technique. My daughter was the queen of note cards, my OTA daughter, right? She had a stack of note cards that grew exponentially as the course went on. It wasn't just A&P, but a lot of her OTA courses. So, you know, note cards can be a great way to review. They take a ton of time to make up, ton of time, but they can be a really good investment. And time management is just super critical in any college course, right? How you spend your time, how constructively you're utilizing that time is the difference between an A and a B, or a B and an F, right? It really, really boils down to, am I putting enough effort in? Am I putting enough time in to succeed? It's like any relationship. The more effort and time you put in, the more you're going to get out from that relationship, whether it's a course, a person, a job. It's really not rocket science. If you don't put much effort in, you're not going to get much out. And as I know, for many of you wanting to go into nursing, you want to have yourself a good A&P knowledge base from which to build. It's absolutely critical. So when I hear of students who are taking 18 credit hours and working 40 hours a week and have 2 toddlers at home, I am in awe of their ability to hold all that together. In fact, I think it's super tough to do that. I see sometimes students who bite off much more than they can chew. You know, they're taking, again, 18 hours, working full time, 2 kids at home, and you know, it's just unsustainable. It truly, truly is, and wanting to get A's in all their courses. So you have to be realistic with yourself. You really, really do. This is a course that you have to spend a lot of time outside of class reviewing the material. This is not an introductory psychology course. I'm not picking on psych. I love psych. But let's understand that that type of course often lends itself to being able to come to class, taking the notes, and doing quite well on the exams or quizzes. You don't even have to open up the book. I mean, you know, that's what I hear from students. A&P is not like that at all. So do not think it will be an easy road. It will be a challenging road for many of you. And you want to start off on a good note. You don't want to dig yourself into a hole that you can't come out of. So keep up with your notes, keep up with the lecture notes, keep up with review of lab stuff. Be able to put ample time into the course. It is super, super critical. Okay, so again, you can look over some of these topics here. Having virtual study groups can be kind of fun. It means getting together, you taking the initiative to study with 2 or 3 other people. Now you can also get together during that open day in a lab, although we got to make sure we're socially distancing, but you could review in a small group for the lab quizzes or lab exams, or come in and study lecture stuff. That's all fine too. So there is the physical ability for you to get together with people, but we again want to be mindful of the 6-foot social distance thing, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's lab or lecture. I am not an expert. I don't know everything there is to know about A&P, but I will certainly do my best to answer your questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find out the answer. So again, you can look these over. I'm going to stop this particular Zoom presentation, and when we come back, we'll talk about the lecture and the lab and talk more about Blackboard. So I'll end that. First Zoom class now.